Welcome to the VIP Voice, the ultimate podcast where communication gets a serious upgrade. Hosted by yours truly, Manny Cabo. We'll be diving into tools, tricks, and techniques to level up your speaking game. And it doesn't matter whether you're in front of the mic, crowd, or just having that all-important one-on-one. Every episode brings real, raw, and inspiring stories from pros across all industries who are turning heads, breaking barriers, and showing up as their best selves. All here to help you do the same. So buckle up, because it's time to unleash your voice and make every word count. So let's get into it, and welcome to the VIP Voice. All right, my VIPs out there, welcome to another episode of the VIP Voice podcast, the show where we break down what it truly means to own your voice, cultivate your message, and leave a lasting impact in any industry. And here, guys, I want to clarify this. Whether you're a musician, podcaster, engineer, entrepreneur, actor, your voice and your stories matter. Now, the tools that you use to amplify that voice, they matter just as much. And trust me, that statement is full of puns, and you'll get it in a second, trust me. But before we dive in, a massive thank you to all of you out there. Like, you guys are the listeners, right? The ones supporting the show, and to my incredible sponsors who keep this show thriving. And today, I am beyond excited to introduce my newest partner, Dark Matter Audio Labs, a company. Seriously, guys, and this is a true understatement, is a company that's revolutionizing the way that we experience sound. You know, and those folks, they're not just engineers, they're storytellers, they're crafting their very tools that help us express ourselves in the clearest, most powerful way possible. That's my definition of it all. And this is the cool thing. Usually it's a one-to-one guest thing, but today we have all three powerhouses from their team joining us to break it all down. So let's meet them, right? You can't see them in the background, but they're making funny faces at me. They're like, shut up, Manny, just talk. So we have Rachelle, right? She's an artist relationship manager, and who was actually my relationship manager for the better part of 20 years. Damn, 20 years. That's crazy. And the connector between the creators of all this cutting edge audio technology. And then we shift over to Dave, who's a technical director. I mean, these guys among themselves, they got like 70 years experience in this thing. He alone has got 20 plus years in R&D, or for those of you, research and development, right? Specializing in in-ear monitors and hearing protection, audio products, the whole works. And just to basically, again, enhance all hearing experiences. And then we have Tal with another 25 plus years in the live sound industry. Like, these guys are a powerhouse. And he's toured the world as an engineer, built multiple companies focusing on headphones, stuff that I love. To, really, when I go into a store, this is stuff that I really engage in, hearing devices and product development. So again, I want to stress out, this is over 70 years of experience between the three of them. And if that's not credibility, I don't know what is. So let's get into it, because if you're serious about your sound, you're going to want to hear what these three have to say. So let's bring them on and welcome Rachelle, Dave, and Tal of Dark Matter Audio Labs. What's up, guys, and welcome to the VIP Voice.
What is up?
Thanks, Manny.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, man. First of all, it's an honor to have you all three on here. Never mind one, but I've got all three. And it's so funny because in most cases, I'm usually dealing with Rachelle. I've dealt with her for so many years, and you have definitely. And to say that you've been there for me, again, is a really true understatement. Every time I've had issues with my in-ears, not from a technical side, I either have to clean them up, polish them up, rewire them, and everything like that. You've always been there. And you know how many shows I do a year, and it's crucial for we musicians to have to rely, right, on somebody to make sure that we have everything we need on the road. So first of all, thank you for all that, right? And I think I'm going to pick you out of the bunch. I think we're going to go first with you. How do you feel about that, Rachelle?
Amazing.
That's the answer. Meanwhile, she's like, like when you look at a pond and you see like a duck floating on water, and it's so calm, pristine. Underneath, her feet are going like this. She's like thinking about everything she has to say. So listen, you're at the crossroads, right, of artists and the technology, right? Helping them, how should I say, navigate the world of high-end audio. That's essentially what you did for me. So
from your experience, what's the biggest misconception that artists and creators all have about the right gear, in this case, in-ears, to enhance their voice, their message, and their personal brands?
Absolutely. I think that the biggest misconception is that people focus too much on the specs and the price tags of these products.
Yeah.
In reality, especially with in-ear monitors, it's enhancing, like you said, enhancing their performance.
Sure.
If you cannot hear yourself clearly on stage, you're not giving the highest performance that you can.
Yeah.
These products are offering unparalleled sound, which I know Dave and Tal are going to go into that as well.
Sure.
But they're providing confidence. They're providing consistency. They're providing hearing protection. That hearing protection allows you to perform for years to come.
Right.
You're saving your hearing. But on the standpoint of gear and in-ear monitors, this product is allowing you to hear on stage. It's helping you perform at the highest level that you can.
Yeah.
And in the end, that's really resonating with the audience because you're confident and consistent in what you're doing on stage.
Yeah, those are all valid points, because how can I deliver a performance if I can't hear myself? And I know all of you have the experience that you've been on the road and you've seen this, where a singer will get into his performance and then I got to take a canna or whatever, like I can't, or they're signaling to the engineer. Like, the last thing you want to do is have to focus on how everything sounds like, right, during a performance. And sometimes even during the warm-up phase, there's always something going on, whether it's RF frequencies or in the audio world, as you'll soon see, and I'm sure they have their own stories, there's always something silly that goes wrong. But when it comes to preserving your ear, make sure you're listening to everything clearly. You have a great mix and it can actually capture all those nuances. That's always been huge for me. And I've never had an issue working with you, Rachelle. Everything that I've explained to you, I know you're like, Manny, I completely get it. So let's get it taken care of, because at the end of the day, that's all we care about. Whatever issue I'm having, I want it fixed, and you guys have been able to deliver. So I appreciate that. That's the exact response that I was thinking you'd say. So let's shift over to you, Tal. And again, I know with all the experience that you guys have, I'm sure you have a voluminous amount of input, and I don't want to get too technical because we will blow people away. We prior to getting on here, we made the comparison. These three together are like the dream theater of audio specs for this type of stuff, and you don't want to delve down that road unless you can keep up. So, Tal, again, you're a live sound expert, right? You've been into product development, touring engineer, you've built companies, the whole nine. So you have a very robust background. 25 years in live sound is huge. There's a lot of merit to that. Now, you've seen and heard it all, full pun intended, of course, but both on the road and in the lab, which is hugely important for what you guys are doing now. So when it comes to building and managing companies around high quality headphones and hearing devices, which is what we're talking about here today, what, in your opinion, is the biggest challenge in getting people to understand the importance of this investing, right, in professional grade gear? Because there's always a deterrent in there somewhere, right? And I remember initially when it's like, well, I don't know, man. Is it worth the investment? And we have that issue. And even my dad, luckily for me, I was brought up with the ideology, listen, you get what you pay for, right? If you buy garbage once, you're going to buy garbage over and over and over again. And that evidenced by your quick response there, I know you can relate to that. So please elaborate, man.
Yeah. So I would say, I've been using in-ears actually for like 20 years now. I think I got my first pair in like 2005. And I would say the biggest challenge I see is getting people to adopt is making that transition from, a wedge mix to in-ears. It's a big, big thing.
It is.
Right? It's a very different experience. You need an engineer of your own to do that. Otherwise, you can actually end up damaging your hearing if you have a house engineer who blows a bunch of feedback straight into your IEMs. So that there are challenges around it, but I think that the benefits vastly outweigh the disadvantages. And I think that another challenge is the artist that says, well, I'm just going to use one ear and one wedge.
Yeah. That's the worst thing to do
because Well, that just also becomes a crutch, and it becomes harder to mix monitors because they start going, I need more on the wedge. Well, now I need more on the ear. Now I need more on the. They're trying to balance the two, and it just doesn't quite work. And so, it's always sort of saying, no, you either got to go all in, and then we'll figure out how to make it work.
Well, yeah, not to cut you off, but that's just it. You can't have both. It just makes no sense. You can't have a solid in-ear and then share that with your floor wedges. First of all, some wedges don't have those nuances, don't have the capacity to have that range. It's brutal. But go ahead. I'll let you explain. Yeah.
So then the other challenge that I find is really the lack of knowledge about the technology on that side of things. Right. And I was there. Look, when I was touring and I had in-ears, I didn't know what made a good in-ear. I didn't really even know what it should sound like, to be honest. It's like I got my IEMs because someone else was like, yeah, I got this model and it's great. I'm like, cool, awesome. And that's still how it works to this day. Yeah. There's a lot of that, it's all word of mouth. Sure. It's like, oh, I got these great, Dark Matter Audio Labs model. Like, you guys should check these out. And then people will buy them. Yeah. Because you can't necessarily demo them, any of them. Right. And, I will say that a lot of the demos out there from brands that are custom versus the universal or generic, the generic doesn't actually sound like the custom because there's, as Dave will get into, there are some technical things there acoustically that just don't match up.
So true.
And so, I think there's also the misconception of more drivers equals more better. And I've had, and I used to think that, and I've had conversations with some of these engineers, monitor engineers at the top of their game who are like, yeah, more drivers, more better. And it's like, that's not the case, because you might have an 8 driver that sounds like X and a 2 driver that sounds like X, when really the sound signature you need is that 2 driver. On stage, you're not going to be like, this doesn't sound like an 8 driver. You know what I mean? You're going to be, this sounds like I need it to, right? And I think,
not to cut you off again, but I could speak from experiences because I had 2. I mean, the dichotomy between the 2 were somewhat minimal, right? You could hear it. But, I had the 30s and then I went up to the 60s, and sure, you could hear it, but it's not groundbreaking. It's not to the point where, oh, wow, it's completely night and day. It's not like that. And I realized that sometimes when I would get a mix, it would sound better in the 30s or it would sound better on the 60s. So I completely agree. That's why it's so important to, select what you specifically need. Yeah.
And I'll say, I think that those differences between the brand will go unnamed, but the difference between that 30 and that 60 that I think you were probably hearing is really the sound signature, not necessarily the driver count. It's a, the 60 from that model is a better sounding model, all drivers aside, than the 30 from that same thing. So, so a lot of it just comes down to sound signature. And I think that people, engineers and musicians don't necessarily know what to look for or what to want. Right.
That's a good way to put it.
They just know what other people tell them to get or what their engineers tell them to get. And, I think there's and this goes, I think, across audio as a whole, pro audio and audiophile. People don't trust their ears. Yeah. And I think that, we trust our eyes, right? We look at something, we know if it looks good to us or not. We don't depend on someone else to tell us that tree looks beautiful or this flower is gorgeous, right? We trust our own eyes, right? But when it comes to hearing and some of these hearing tools, we don't trust ourselves and we don't trust our own hearing. We rely on other people to tell us what sounds good or what is good or why something's better before we make a decision. I think that's also a big problem overall.
You know what? There is a huge validity to that, because as a singer, I can't tell you even now, prior to talking to you here, I get asked all the time, hey, Manny, what's up with dark matter? Or whether I'm stage performing, hey, Manny, I noticed your in-ears, man. What company do you use? What brand do you use? And there's huge validity in hearsay as being a dominant factor for people buying in-ears. And you're absolutely right. And it's so funny you pointed that out, because I would have these like conversations about like, why they're listening to it? Why do you need my opinion? Do you like the way it sounds? You know what I mean? I can't get into the way your brain processes audio. So I'm happy that you mentioned that. But continue, please.
Yeah, I think it's not anything negative against anybody. It's really is just it's like an unknown. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so I think we bring to the table something that sounds accurate, and Dave can get into what accurate means. And not, and by sounding accurate, you're going to get a better result. Yeah. And I firmly believe that our models will be more efficient for musicians to use on stage. I think that they're going to be easier for engineers to work with on stage. And it's really just getting the word out there, getting the adoption. But the other part is educating people, right? We want to educate, the musicians and engineers. Yeah, because I think people want to know these things.
Yeah, and that's the whole purpose of having you guys on here. Again, I need to reiterate that because I want you guys to really dispel all the myths that are out there behind in-ears, because this is a great conversation.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I said 30 minutes, but I'm like, yeah, that's not good. But, we're getting to the juicy stuff here, and you're touching all the points that needed to be addressed. And you sold me already, with respect to that, because those are the concerns that especially vocalists or people that utilize their voice for a living have, especially if you're using in-ears. And they are difficult to get used to at first, but once you do get used to them, there's no going back, people. I promise you, there is no going back. So let's shift over to Dave now. I know you're going to piggyback off of everything you had to say. Now, you as well, you spent decades designing custom and universal IEMs, right? And hearing protection and all this quote unquote groundbreaking audio stuff, right? But what's one, if you could limit it to one, what's one game-changing innovation in audio tech that many musicians, podcasters, even engineers aren't taking full advantage of, but let's just be real here, but absolutely should be?
So innovation is an interesting word. It's thrown out a lot. Right. And
it truly is.
And nowadays, innovation often equates to buzzwords that people tie to technology, often things that have existed for years. So I don't know that I'm going to nail down one particular innovation. I'm going to kind of go back to the beginning, even before I was there. My lineage leading up to this is that I started working at Etymotic at 2005. Etymotic was the first to do a universal fit IEM. In fact, well before I was there, we made IEMs that were used for audiological testing, in the 80s, long before there were any commercial things. And Westtone's history is on the custom side. When they started, Westtone was tied with Ultimate Ears and Jerry Harvey, and they kind of all went their separate ways over time. But in the beginning, they were all tied together. And Etymotic has a deep history of R&D in understanding small tube acoustics and basically how IEMs work. It all goes back to testing that was done in the 70s by the founder of Etymotic, Mead Killian, for hearing aid research with his dissertation that he did. And basically, it all kind of goes back to the fundamental response of the human ear canal. And I'm not going to get too deep into it. I'm always happy to dig deep into it, but I don't know if this is the format for that. But
sure people will have tons of questions. You could just touch upon certain things, and then obviously if people want to reach out, they're going to know how to get in touch with you. Because after this episode, what I'd like to do is, again, I really want to encourage people to take their hearing seriously and to obviously work with a company that understands all of these nuances, because it's not just one piece of the puzzle. But go ahead, continue.
Right. And that's fundamentally what I'm trying to get at is, what we really bring to the table is a fundamental understanding of what makes a flat earphone. It's always the starting point. Most of our earphones are not ruler flat because that's not what people want. They want a little bit more bass. They want a little bit less treble. They want a little bit less mids or whatever. But, especially in the beginning, people didn't understand what that was. They didn't understand that, a flat signal outside of the ear, by the time it gets to your eardrum, isn't flat anymore because of the resonance of your ear canal and your pinna and the influence of basically the whole human biology.
Wild, man. It's crazy.
And that's what we fundamentally have a really good understanding of. And that was Etymotic's strength. Now, I would argue that, Westone had a number of innovations over the years, but fundamentally what they contributed the most to, in my eyes, is that their real understanding of fit in the ear and what makes a comfortable earphone. They did, frankly, a better job than Etymotic did. And what we as Dark Matter bring to the table is we understand all of the acoustics, right? We understand what makes a good starting point for any audio engineer, which is what Tal kind of hinted at, is that, all of our stuff is designed to be a really good starting point. And the models are different, and we're always happy to work with people to figure out which model best suits their needs. And it may not be the most expensive. It may not be the most drivers, although, sometimes it is. Sometimes you're a drummer, you want more headroom or something like that. There are reasons for it. But fundamentally, we have a really good grasp of not only the acoustics, but also what fits in the ear, what allows you to do a deeper ceiling mold, but still make it comfortable so that a singer doesn't have occlusion. And I talk about that often when I talk
I got to cut you off here because this is exactly why this is crucial. For somebody like me, I'm still learning about this stuff. You've mentioned a couple of things that went right over my head, but since I've used in-ears for the better part of 20 years, it makes perfect sense to me. But I think the inviting thing for me, something that really resonates with me and just always lands it. You guys are like a family of knowledge. So if I walk in to a store, any store, I don't care if you're a drummer, guitar player, singer, whatever, and I get the opportunity to speak to somebody like yourself, I'm going to get a masterclass that's not intimidating because it's relevant to my personal needs. Because like you said, we don't know enough to know what we need or what we know at that matter. And you guys could fill in the blanks. We don't have to know everything. And you guys having that family background, that's what sold me originally. I remember talking to Rachelle about you in passing and Tal. And I'm like, I'm already sold because you have the relationship, which is huge. That's a big, that's a non-negotiable for me. Like I need to be able to have a rapport. And then you have that knowledge coupled with that family type of vibe in it. I'm sold. So a lot of people need that nurturing. So I think it's vital that we're talking about this because after this episode, people are going to want to rewind. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? I had no idea that whatever word that he used, they're going to go back and look up the word. What's that mean? Like, oh my God, I can't have that in my ear, So you're bringing awareness, which is great.
And Manny, to Tal's point earlier, we all come from, we've all been encouraged through the folks that we worked with, the folks that taught us over the years, that teaching is important. And
absolutely,
some companies, and I'm certainly not going to name any companies, but it's just harder to get to them. It's harder to get to people you can talk to. And one of the things we talked about when we started this whole thing is we want to be approachable.
Yeah.
I am Dave at darkmatteraudiolabs.com. Don't post that so that, I get spammed, but anybody that's listening is welcome to reach out to me. If you have questions, I will answer them. I will walk people through technical questions. Rachelle will walk people through any artist questions they have or any questions. Tal's the same way. We will all talk to you to try to get you the best answer so that, we can find out what the right solution is for you. It's not about upselling. It's not about, everybody involved will tell you I am the worst salesperson in this company. I'm an engineer at heart. I like finding solutions to problems.
Exactly.
And we will work with people because, we don't view this as a one-time transaction with people. This is, it's about bringing people into the family. It's we want to have a lifetime.
Bingo. Hold on. You just said it. you just said. I had to cut you off because that right there is a selling point. And the fact that you suck at sales, you know what that tells me? See, I convolute that message. That
He
means
sucks at sales.
Right?
I suck at sales. Other people are fine.
Not the company.
I'm bad at it.
But there's a point here I'm trying to make, and I promise I won't take the scenic route. I think what I'm trying to say is Dave's innocence and knowledge wrapped up in one. I can guarantee I'm going to get the proper guidance that I need, because the best sales people in the world, because I was a salesperson. I worked at B&H Photo. I worked at Apple, some of the top companies that everyone knows around the world. And the reason why I used to get my repeat business, and this isn't to boast, was because I was honest. I was actually the one that said, well, listen, do you really need a fully loaded MacBook Pro when you could do it with a simple computer, like a Mac Mini or something like that? And I would say, what are your needs? I just address their needs. And the problem with many companies is they don't shut up. They want to push and they want to sell you the best top of the line. When the matter of fact is, you don't need the top of the line. You just need to address your personal needs. But having that knowledge is what the point I'm trying to make is so refreshing, because I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And having a family and somebody, like Dave, that could be like, listen, Manny, what I would probably recommend, I know you know your stuff and I know what you need, but I would probably alter that a little bit and try these for size, because I think they're going to match your specific needs. And that's what I'm looking for. And I guarantee I'm not the only one, but go for it.
Yeah. I mean, that was basically it. It's about a lifetime relationship.
Yeah.
Is what we're trying to gain is, we want to work with somebody and we want, if them to come to us with their needs, and we'll work through things.
I love it.
And I like the technical questions. So,
I know you do. That's what I'm trying to stay away from. I'm like trying to sidestep you on those.
You want me to explain occlusion? Because I think occlusion was the one that got you.
You know what? If you can keep it down to a minute, go for it, please. Because that really intrigued me there for a second.
You ever stick your fingers in your ears and hum?
Yeah.
And it sounds, and you hear that resonance in your head.
Yes.
That happens to singers when you have too shallow of an ear canal. Basically, if your IEM doesn't seal deep enough in your ear, you get that occlusion effect. Yeah. When you're singing and you have occlusion effect, it's annoying as hell.
There you go.
So that's what that is.
We don't want occlusion. So let's prevent occlusion.
You do not want occlusion.
That's the word. That's the word of the episode. So now I got a question for all of you. Okay. Now, dark matter. By the way, I love that name. It's like going to the dark side. I remember my first conversation with it. I love the logo. I love the name. I may be a little biased, but who cares? It's my show. I can say whatever I want. So, and we all have assessed that it's not just about making gear rather. And for me, it's about also assisting us in our daily routines, amplifying our voices, using it for podcasts, enhancing our stories, and also preserving our hearing. Of course, you can't let that fall on the wayside. So my question to all of you is this, what's one piece of advice that you would give to every musician, podcaster, engineer, singer, or like I said and mentioned, anyone who requires good hearing protection, right? About how to use the right tools to make their message more powerful, clear, unforgettable, and make their job easier overall.
I'll start it first just because I'm on a roll and I'm talking. But, for me, it's two parts of the same answer. It has to do with what you talked about with hearing protection. And one is that, Tal talked about wedges, and the damage caused by wedges over years has been significant to a lot of performers. And when you're a musician, ears are your tool. Your hands are too, or if you're a singer, your vocal cords, but your ears are such an important tool. And if your hearing goes, it's gone. And you can't get it back. So, the hearing protection aspect of IEMs really can't be understated. And it also goes to making sure when you get them from us or anybody else, make sure they fit, make sure they seal, because if they don't, we want to fix that right away. Because we want them to seal in your ears. It's all about, that's part of the customer satisfaction thing, is they have to seal in your ears. And the other thing is that goes along with this is IEMs are, often presented as protection against hearing loss, and they certainly can be when deployed intelligently. And what I mean by that is that if you take them, a lot of them are capable of going very, very loud. If you take them and you take that belt pack and spin that dial and you go all the way up, you could still lose your hearing. So the thing about a good ceiling IEM on stage is it blocks out external noise, which allows you to run at a lower level. And you should really try to run at a level that's comfortable, lets you hear all the details, but is lower than wedge level, because that's how you save your hearing.
Perfect sense.
So that's the most important thing.
It does. And people, it's funny, but people don't understand that concept. It's not about how loud it is. The reason why wedges are extremely loud, because you got, Jimmy Page behind you cranking and wants his guitar louder. So that in turn, engineer has to turn everything up. And that's why so many bands like The Who and AC/DC, all these bands, they have no hearing left specifically for that, because this technology essentially didn't exist back in the 70s and 80s. Well, it did, but to the point where it's filtered in your ear in a small little device like I'm wearing right now. So, yeah, I mean.
And even in a small club, the drum sets, the cymbals can go above 130, which is very, very loud.
I agree with Dave. The biggest thing with in-ear monitors is the hearing protection. Getting the right seal, making sure that you're using them properly. That's the best advice we can give people.
And just to let everybody know who's listening, again, not to cut you off, Rachelle, I am waiting for Tal to come in next month. Listen, I've got 2 ear, nose, and throat specialists next week. Yeah, I'm waiting for him because I know he knows exactly what he's doing. And I'm not knocking doctors, I'm not knocking agencies, but sometimes you get people that are just hired to do a specific job and they're just getting paid. No offense to those people that work or have that mentality, but when it comes to my ears, these are my babies. And like you said, once these go, my career is pretty much shot. So I'm taking it upon myself to waiting an additional week to have Tal come in and specifically do my molds. So I just needed to share that because you should as well.
Well, and that factors into the hearing protection part of it, because if you're not getting a good seal with the final product, generally it's because the impressions weren't done right. So, getting a right impression, getting the right seal is going to have the effect of, getting the hearing protection that you need with these. But then also going with a company that is consistent and reliable and is going to provide you with good support. That would be us. So, dark matter is the way to go.
It really is. There you go. I like what you did there. I like you inserted that cheap plug-in. Yeah, you had to. Please.
She's better at sales than I am.
Yeah, evidently. No, go ahead.
I'll agree with Dave and Rachelle on, fit is a huge part of it. I think that getting a model that's suited for your instrument and what you do is important. I think also just sticking with it and, understanding that, this could make you a better musician, right? Because it might afford you the opportunity to play with some nuance that maybe you couldn't quite do with a wedge mix because you just can't hear all those little details. And so really to be able to, get more technical with your instrument, really kind of make some of those tone changes that you want to make with your guitar, right? That you just can't get without having in-ears. I mean, you just can't get that on stage. It's like a wedge mix is really, it's reinforcement, right? I mean, that's
the perfect word for it. Yeah.
And I mean, that's always how I was brought up. That's how I mix, right? I don't want people, when I'm mixing front of house, I don't want people to think the sound is coming from the speakers. I want it to be coming from the stage. I want the singer to be right there, right? I want the drummer to be back there. I want the bass player over here. I want it to sound transparent and natural. And I think that in-ears I'll say this for engineers, it's a huge benefit for a front of house engineer to have your whole band on in-ears, because wedges, while coming out the front, you might have full range. If they're really loud, then you've got all of this muddy 200 hertz garbage coming off the back of those wedges into the house. And it can make it really hard to mix. I mean, you'll often have, especially in smaller clubs, you get issues with the front of house engineer battling with the monitors because the musicians want it louder And then because the front of house is too loud, and then, but it's like, it's a cycle.
It's a perpetual battle.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So when you have everybody on in-ears, you can have that silent stage. You can even, I've done some tours where we had fake cabinets on the stage and the real guitar cabinets backstage. Hilarious. Blasting into oblivion wherever the hell they want. And, if you were to turn off the front of house mix, it's like all you really hear is a drum kit, and it's glorious as a front of house engineer to have that, because then you can really tune your mix however you want to. Right. And so everybody can get a great sound that way, right? You can get a great front of house sound. You can get every musician can get an amazing monitor mix that they just couldn't get without it. And, it is the advancement of live sound technology, right? I mean, you go back to like Grateful Dead's Wall of Sound, with the beginnings of Meyer Sound and John Meyer, and fast forward to, those were all point source speakers, and fast forward today, you've got all line array stuff, which is way more tunable and directional than anything in the past. And they even have technology now where they can actually, not only tune the width, but the height of speakers. And in an arena, they can really tune that system so that it is like hitting the seats and only the seats. And it's only getting better, right? So as that progresses, in the front of house arena, and you're getting much better sound in your venue, if you have a bunch of boxes on the floor of a stage blasting out sound, well, that's just going to screw it all up.
Absolutely.
So in-ears are necessary. Think about the Sphere in Vegas, right? If they had a bunch of floor wedges, it'd probably screw that whole thing up.
It would destroy the whole element and the vibe of the place, what it's supposed to stand for, right?
And there's something like, I don't know, what is it, like 14,000 speakers or something the whole thing?
My buddies that have been there, they said it's overwhelming, but it's the way they did it. They did it right. I guess for me, in-ears, the most important thing for me is it's the isolation and it's the separation of everything. And again, there's only 3 variables. I don't have to crank it. I hear everything. And it also depends on your engineer, of course. They got to know what they're doing. So you could have the best pair of in-ears, but if your sound guy, your front or back house, they don't know what they're doing, it's rough. But it's still more advantageous than having wedges cranking in your left and right ear all freaking night. So listen, I appreciate that. And again, this has been nothing short of an incredible conversation, very, very enlightening conversation for all of you out there. And believe me, it's going to be evergreen. You can listen to it as many times as you want. And I know everyone's out there walking away with some serious knowledge bombs on how to, step up their audio game, essentially, which is what I wanted to do. And just to showcase these guys and how great they are, and you could feel their attitude and why it was so easy for me. It's certainly a no-brainer, but above all, to protect your hearing and make sure that your messages, that whatever you're doing with your voice or listening is heard with clarity and, of course, impact. So, guys, massive thanks again to you and Rachelle, Dave, and Tal, and Dark Matter Audio Labs for sharing all of your insights with us and everything that you're doing up there. So, guys, if you want to level up your sound, you know where to go. Go check out Dark Matter Audio Labs at darkmatteraudiolabs.com and start treating your ears, people. Start treating your ears and your voice like the powerful instruments that they are, as they've mentioned here in the show. Okay. So unless you guys have anything else to impart, man.
I got one thing. Please. I would say, of course, visit our website. I think also, if you have any questions, contact us through the site. We will answer you, within a couple hours. And it'll either be me or Dave, most likely. And so any questions you have, no matter how technical, on either side of the spectrum, we're happy to answer and we're happy to take care of you. I truly feel we have a superior product and a superior brand, and it's really just, it's educating people and getting ourselves out there, and this is how we do it.
Well, you definitely got my support, and that's why I brought you guys on here, because I am honored. So hurry up and get the hell back in Jersey, okay, so I can get my molds done and start my career and keep it going like I do. So, guys, once again, until next time, please, as I always say, stay bold, stay creative, find your voice with the VIP voice. See what I did there? All right, guys, once again, Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, Manny.
Thanks for tuning in to the VIP Voice podcast. If today's episode resonated, we'd love for you to leave a quick review. It really helps spread the word. And if you're a speaker, entertainer, entrepreneur, or industry professional with a story to share, we're always on the lookout for inspiring guests who align with our mission. So drop us a message at info@mannycabo.com. Let's keep building a community of powerful voices. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.